Welcome to the garage. Today we are working on something interesting. This is the 1998 Suzuki Quadrunner. This is the pit vehicle, homestead, all-purpose, gopher, pack mule, all that good stuff. Now this got sidelined because the carburetor float stuck and it was allowing gas past it, filled the crankcase up with gas, just wasn't a good scene. So we're gonna start by getting the plastics off and start getting the carburetor rebuilt, and then I've got some other fun stuff coming for this beast. So this is the LTF500 Suzuki Quadrunner, kind of a coveted model with the 5-speed on the other side. Great machine, lots of torque, does everything I need it for. But the one thing they didn't do is make these very easy to work on. The carburetor is hiding behind all the plastic up there. It's a little hard to get to, so I gotta start taking the plastic off. This one has spent some significant time on the trails and is missing a lot of the plastic hardware, which is good for me and bad for me, but you know, it is what it is. So let's start taking the plastic off. We're getting closer. There's a carburetor under there, but first I'm going to take the gas tank off, which has one here, and you can get to it through this hole in the front. That one should also have a screw, but it doesn't. Like I said, spent a lot of time on the trail. So I'm going to pop those three, slide the gas tank out, and get it disconnected. Now we've got good access to the carburetor. There's the top of it. It's held on by a couple of screws down there hiding in the dark. That is kind of like the idle speed mixture adjustment thingy right there. It does have a vacuum line, which is kind of the fuel pump for the twisty petcock over on the tank. So let's look around, see what we got to disconnect. We know this guy's got to come off. There's also a choke on here. I want to say it's on the other side. Oh, let me look for a second and I'll get back to you. It's been a while since I've had this off. Okay, so to undo the throttle, which is this cable right here, enters through the top in that hole. Whoop, bumped the light. You take off this black Mikuni cover right there. Now, the best thing to do is to move it to wide open and then slide the cable down and the brass thing out. The brass thing is that little guy right there. And then you have your throttle free. Now the choke is this guy right here, and I'm trying to remember how to take that off, so give me a minute. I may have gotten a little ahead of myself, but I undid the 2 screws on the band clamp to take the carburetor free, and then I just realized, hey, that's got flats, it's a nut, so that is how the choke comes out. I can't show you and get my hand in there, but undo that nut, and everything will be exposed to get the choke undone. And there it is. There's your choke. Basically, it's going to allow more fuel and mixture to get by, but just unthread that little guy. It's hard to get a wrench on there. I used a pair of needle nose to very carefully to manipulate it without hurting anything. So now I'm going to work on getting that carburetor out. Carburetor's here. Now we got to disassemble it, throw it in the ultrasonic parts cleaner, and get it cleaned up and figure out what's wrong with it. With the carburetor disassembled, and just as a note, I did have to take a hammer and a center punch to knock the pin out that held the float in. Also making note that some of these parts look like they haven't been in there very long. That's because they haven't. When I was taking it apart, a little whisker of something fell out from the needle and seat, which could have been my hang up the whole time, but I got a rebuild kit. We're just going to go through the whole thing. So now I'm going to get the ultrasonic parts cleaner and drop all of the big parts in so that way they can get cleaned. I've got the ultrasonic cleaner ready. This is a ultrasonic cleaner from Harbor Freight. It has a heating feature, which is labeled TC. No idea why, just that it is. So I'm going to get the parts tossed in and start their process. This is just hot water and simple green, by the way. I've used a little bit of Dawn dish soap, and sometimes it makes a frothy mess, sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, this is what I got, so we're going to do it. So that'll churn along and do its ultrasonic cleany thing. And since it's literally too tall, after a couple of those sessions, I'm going to flip it over, let it get the other side, do that for a while, and blow everything out with compressed air. I've done this before, and it actually works out really sweet. One nice, neat, clean, still steaming carburetor. It's a little warm on the fingers, don't worry. So now I'm going to grab some compressed air and blow through all of the passages and make sure this guy is clean. This is not the dirtiest thing I've ever dropped in an ultrasonic cleaner, but you know something? That's pretty sweet. I may start using it for more things. So with the carburetor freshly put back together and clean, let's start putting it back on the four-wheeler. Now, I know that there's some things we got to keep in mind, like where the heck did it go? The choke is right there. We got to hook up all the throttle linkages, you know, the vacuum line for the technically fuel pump, but you know, the petcock basically, the two vent lines, and it's pretty well ready to go. So let's get it on. So the carburetor's back on, gas tank's full of gas. I did change the oil, but now I've got another problem. Something in the starter relay isn't playing nice, but I can pull on it and it comes right to life. So I'm just gonna let that run for a minute, make sure everything's happy on the carburetor, make sure it revs nice and clean, make sure the choke comes off, you know, those kinds of things. Then I'll put the seat back on it and go for a test drive, get all the plastics on it, and we're good to go. So I took the Suzuki out, drove it around the property a little bit. It runs pretty good. There's some idle tuning I'll have to address. I'll do that in a few minutes.